Welcome to our deep dive into the world of The Wizard of Oz. We're going to be going beyond the Yellow Brick Road in the 1939 movie that we all know and love, and uncover some surprising truths about L. Frank Baum's book, the original book published all the way back in 1900. Now, you might be thinking, a children's book, what's the big deal? But here's where it gets interesting. Baum wasn't just writing a fantasy story. He was writing during the end of the Gilded Age, a time of immense economic change in America, kind of like the late 20th century with the dot-com boom and bust.
Exactly. And Baum was right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
He was living and breathing those anxieties, and he was such a fascinating character. He was a suffragist, a bit of a cynic about religion and politics, and he absolutely loved puns.
Which explains a lot about the book's appeal to children, right? But the big question we're going to be asking today is, did Baum intentionally embed hidden meanings into this story? Was The Wizard of Oz actually a subtle commentary on the anxieties of the time?
That's what we're going to explore. And one of the most compelling pieces of this puzzle is the 1893 World's Fair, also known as the Columbian Exposition. Baum attended that in Chicago. And this wasn't just your average state fair with like pie contests and prize-winning pigs. This was a massive spectacle to showcase America's progress and ingenuity to the world.
So picture this. A dazzling white city constructed on the shores of Lake Michigan. Gleaming, neoclassical buildings, electric lights, which were brand new back then, and a massive Ferris wheel so big it carried railroad cars instead of seats.
It was all about projecting this image of prosperity and progress. But just like the Emerald City's sparkle in the book is actually an illusion that's achieved by wearing green-tinted glasses, the White City's grandeur was also a facade. It was masking these social and economic realities of the Gilded Age.
A lot of people at that time were worried about things like the gold standard, whether the US dollar should be backed by gold or silver, which would have huge effects on the economy. Imagine if everyone just suddenly decided that Bitcoin was the only real currency. It would cause chaos, right?
Exactly. And those anxieties about economic instability and the growing gap between the rich and the poor and the changing nature of American society, all of that found its way into Baum's writing.
And that's where the 1893 World's Fair becomes even more interesting. It wasn't just a place to show off these new inventions. It was also a melting pot of cultures and ideas. Baum, a salesman at the time, would have been surrounded by all these people from all walks of life, hearing their stories, absorbing their perspectives on this rapidly changing world.
And amidst all that, tucked away in the Connecticut Delegations exhibit, we find this local connection, the Willimantic Linen Company, which eventually became the American Thread Company, had a pretty prominent display there.
And their agent, William Eugene Boss, was a bit of a scrapbook fanatic. And his meticulously kept scrapbook has survived to this day and gives us a glimpse into the impact of the fair on everyday people.
Yeah, it's a treasure trove of fascinating details. For example, Boss commissioned a children's story about a lazy fairy who is punished by being turned into thread at the Willimantic Linen Company.
Let's talk about a harsh lesson. It really highlights the contrast between the moralistic children's literature of that time and The Wizard of Oz, which, despite all this debate about hidden meanings, was really primarily focused on entertainment. But that doesn't mean that Baum wasn't engaging with these issues of his time at all.
Exactly. And that brings us to the debate that was sparked by historian Henry Littlefield back in the 1960s. The idea that The Wizard of Oz is actually a populist allegory.
Now, for those of you who may not be history buffs, the populist movement was all about giving everyday people, especially farmers, more power in government. They were fighting against big banks and monopolies and what they saw as corruption in the system.
Right. And Littlefield argued that you could see those anxieties about the changing American dream reflected in the characters in the book. Dorothy as the average American, the Scarecrow as the intelligent but uneducated farmer.
The Tin Woodman as the dehumanized industrial worker. The Cowardly Lion as William Jennings Bryan, a famous politician who championed populist causes, and the Wizard himself as a stand-in for those corrupt politicians or even President Grover Cleveland at the time, and of course the Yellow Brick Road representing the gold standard.
Now, while the one-to-one allegory might be a bit simplistic, it's undeniable that Baum was writing during a time when all these ideas were swirling around him. He was witnessing firsthand the struggles of everyday Americans. It's hard to imagine that those experiences didn't seep into his storytelling. And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. It's about understanding how a seemingly simple children's story can act as a mirror to the hopes and fears of a particular time in history. It's like we're uncovering a hidden message in a time capsule.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder how Baum himself viewed his own creation. Did he intentionally set out to write some sort of political allegory? Or was he just trying to entertain his sons with a good bedtime story? We might never know for sure, but the beauty of The Wizard of Oz is that it is open to interpretation.
Absolutely. And those interpretations can even change over time. For example, some scholars have argued that The Wizard of Oz can be read through a feminist lens.
That's something I hadn't really considered before. What are some of the feminist themes that people have noticed?
Well, for starters, you have Dorothy as the hero, the central hero of the story. She drives the action, she makes the decisions, and ultimately she saves herself and her companions.
Yeah, that is a pretty big deal for a book published in 1900 when women were still fighting for basic rights like the right to vote.
Exactly. And then you have the witches, both the good witches, Glinda, and the good witch of the north, and the wicked witch of the west. All of them are incredibly powerful figures, further challenging traditional gender roles of the time.
It's almost like Baum is suggesting that women can be both forces of good and evil, capable of wielding power in their own right.
Right, and some scholars even argue that the silver slippers in the book, they were silver, not ruby like in the film, might be a nod to that silver standard debate we were talking about earlier, which was a major issue for the populists.
Wow, the symbolism really runs deep. But beyond the political and feminist interpretations, there are also those personal details from Baum's life that might have made their way into the story. For instance, his uncle had a prosthetic leg, which some believe inspired the Tin Woodman character.
That's a compelling connection. And then there's his time living in South Dakota during the Wounded Knee era, a really dark chapter in American history marked by violence and the displacement of Native Americans. Some believe that experience may have contributed to the creation of the flying monkeys, who are, after all, quite frightening figures, representing a force that Dorothy just has absolutely no control over.
It's fascinating to think about how these personal experiences could have even subconsciously seeped into his writing. But no matter how you interpret it, there's no denying that The Wizard of Oz has had a huge impact on our culture.
Absolutely. It's been adapted and reimagined so many times, from that iconic 1939 film to stage musicals like The Wiz and Wicked. And each of those adaptations offers a new lens through which to view the story, reflecting the concerns and values of its own time.
Yeah, it's incredible how a story written over a century ago can still feel so relevant and speak to new generations. What do you think accounts for that enduring appeal?
Well, on one level, it's simply a great adventure story. It has all the elements that make for a great tale, a likable protagonist, quirky companions, a perilous journey, and ultimately a triumphant return home.
Hmm.
But it's more than just a good yarn, right?
Right. There's something deeper going on there.
Exactly. I think it's the story's ability to tap into these universal human experiences. The longing for something more, the struggle against adversity, the search for meaning and belonging. Those are all themes that really resonate with people, regardless of their age, background, or cultural context.
It's like we all have a bit of Dorothy in us, yearning for a place over the rainbow where our dreams can come true. And that's what makes The Wizard of Oz so enduring. It speaks to something fundamental about being human.
And it does so in a way that's both entertaining and thought-provoking. It allows us to escape into this world of fantasy while also challenging us to confront these real-world issues like social injustice, economic inequality, and that search for identity.
It's like Baum created a world that can be enjoyed on multiple levels. As pure escapist adventure, a political allegory, a feminist tale, or even just a reflection of his own personal experiences. And that's what makes The Wizard of Oz such a rich text to explore. It's a story that continues to kind of grow and evolve with us, revealing new layers of meaning as we revisit it throughout our lives.
But let's take a closer look at how those layers of meaning unfold. We've touched on the historical context, the symbolism, the different interpretations, the enduring legacy. But what about the specific details that make the story so memorable? Those vivid images, those quirky characters, those catchy songs. What makes them stick with us long after we've finished reading the story or watching the movie?
That's a great point. It's those details that really bring the story to life.
Exactly. Baum had this incredible ability to create a world that felt both fantastical and believable. He paid attention to the small things, the little details that make the world of Oz feel real and lived in.
Like those really iconic images, the yellow brick road winding its way through those poppy fields, the Emerald City gleaming in the distance, the Wicked Witch flying on her broomstick. Those are images that stay with us, imprinted on our memories from childhood.
And then there are the characters themselves. Dorothy with her gingham dress and ruby slippers, the Scarecrow with his straw-stuffed head, the Tin Man with his rusty axe, and the Cowardly Lion with his booming roar, each one so unique and memorable. And they embody these universal desires that we can all relate to, the longing for intelligence, for compassion, for courage.
And let's not forget the music. Over the Rainbow, We're Off to See the Wizard, The Merry Old Land of Oz. Those songs are instantly recognizable and they just evoke this sense of nostalgia and wonder.
It's that combination of vivid imagery, memorable characters, and those catchy tunes that makes The Wizard of Oz such an immersive experience.
It's like Baum created a world that we can not only see and hear, but also feel. We can step into Dorothy's shoes and experience that wonder and excitement of her journey right alongside her.
And that's what makes this story so powerful. It engages our senses, our emotions, and our imaginations, creating a lasting impact that really transcends time and generations.
But we can't forget that The Wizard of Oz is also a product of its time, and it reflects the social and cultural norms of the early 20th century, which can be kind of problematic from a modern perspective.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's crucial to engage with the text critically, to acknowledge both its strengths and its limitations. For example, the portrayal of the flying monkeys has been criticized for perpetuating harmful stereotypes about indigenous people. And the overall message of the story, with its emphasis on returning home and embracing those traditional values, can be seen as somewhat conservative.
That's an important point to raise. It's crucial to recognize that even beloved classics can contain elements that are outdated or offensive.
And that's why it's so important to engage with these texts thoughtfully and critically. We can appreciate the story's enduring qualities while also acknowledging its flaws.
Exactly. We can learn from the past, celebrate the story's positive aspects, and use it as an opportunity to have these meaningful conversations about representation, inclusivity, and the evolution of cultural norms.
It's a reminder that even the most beloved stories are not immune to the complexities of history and the ongoing need for critical reflection.
Absolutely. And as we continue to explore and reinterpret The Wizard of Oz for new generations, it's essential to do so with awareness, sensitivity, and a willingness to engage with those complexities.
And in doing so, we can ensure that this timeless story continues to inspire, to challenge, and to entertain audiences for many years to come. But let's take a step back for a moment and think about the impact of the World's Fair on Baum's creative process.
You mentioned that the grandeur and spectacle of that white city probably influenced his depiction of the Emerald City. But were there other more subtle ways in which the fair might have shaped the story?
Here's where it gets really interesting. The World's Fair wasn't just this showcase of technological innovation. It was also a place where different cultures and ideas came together from all over the world. Baum would have encountered people from all over the world, each with their own customs, beliefs, and stories.
So it's like the fair itself was a microcosm of the diverse and rapidly changing world that Baum was living in.
Exactly. And it's fascinating to consider how this exposure to all these different perspectives might have informed his writing. The world of Oz, with its fantastical creatures, its diverse landscapes, these imaginative characters, could be seen as a reflection of that cultural melting pot that Baum experienced at the fair.
That's a really intriguing idea. It suggests that The Wizard of Oz wasn't just a product of Baum's imagination, but also a reflection of those broader social and cultural forces that were shaping America at the turn of the 20th century.
Precisely.
Hmm.
And that's what makes the story so enduring. It's not just this whimsical fantasy. It's a reflection of a particular moment in history, a snapshot of a society grappling with change, with uncertainty, and with that search for identity.
And those themes, as we've discussed, are still relevant today. We're also living in a time of rapid globalization, technological advancement, cultural shifts. In a way, we're facing our own version of the yellow brick road, trying to navigate a world that's constantly changing and evolving.
That's a powerful analogy. And it highlights the importance of understanding the historical context of The Wizard of Oz. By delving into the world that Baum lived in, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the story's message and its enduring power.
It's like we're following in Dorothy's footsteps, taking our own journey of discovery and understanding.
And who knows what wonders we might encounter along the way, and what lessons can we learn from Dorothy's journey that we can uh, apply to our own quest for meaning and purpose and belonging.
And maybe even more importantly, what wonders are waiting for us on our own personal yellow brick roads.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and never, ever stop believing in the magic of possibility.
That's a great note to end on. I think this deep dive has really shown just how multi-layered and thought-provoking The Wizard of Oz really is. It's a story that can be enjoyed on so many different levels.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even the most familiar tales can have hidden depths just waiting to be discovered,
Mhm.
and that the real power of storytelling lies not just in the words on the page, but also in the connections that we make, the interpretations we bring, and the conversations we spark.
So I really encourage you to revisit The Wizard of Oz, whether that's reading the original book by Baum, watching one of the many film adaptations, or even just reflecting on those iconic images and themes.
Think about how the story speaks to you now in the context of your own life and your own experiences.
What new insights can you glean?
What connections can you make to the world all around you?
And who knows, you might even discover your own personal yellow brick road, leading to unexpected adventures and self-discoveries.
And with that thought, we want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into The Wizard of Oz.
We hope you've enjoyed the journey, and we'll see you next time.